Hey everybody, welcome to the SaaS Founder Show. I'm Tony Zayas. I'm joined with Andy Helco. Andy, how are you doing in this cold? Staying warm?
There's a lot of snow out there, I'll tell you that. I was up yesterday morning at like 4 a.m. shoveling, so that's exactly what I want to be doing.
It was like shoveling wet cement.
Yeah, pretty much.
Pretty heavy, so. Well, very cool. We have another founder here with a ton of great experience that I'm really excited to talk to here today. So we have Pat Osorio. She's co-founder and CMO at Birdie. So Pat, how you doing?
Hello. Hi guys, good morning. I'm doing great.
Good morning.
I'm in the Sunshine State, so I don't have problems with snow at all.
Yeah, we have a couple team members in Florida, so they usually rub it in when we when we get the snow and all that. So
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, thank you for taking time out of your busy day to talk to us. We're super excited to hear all about, you got a real impressive background, a lot that you've done, but I just I'll share a little bit about the description of Birdie. So it's a SaaS company with a powerful AI platform that captures consumer feedback from numerous sources and generates real-time actionable insights, enabling consumer brands to prioritize areas that will have the most impact on the business. So really cool. And I guess typically we like to start out with, the origin story. So where did Birdie come from?
Cool. So I used to work at a company that I'm a partner of. And this company is a MarTech provider for Fortune 500 companies. It pretty much automates all the process of producing, approving, and storing campaigns. And one of my roles there was to lead product development, innovation, new business development. And while I was doing some research on trends and possible new things that we could build for this previous company, I saw some data about how the number of online reviews was growing, and the number of consumer feedback available online was higher and higher. And I started thinking about how brands could use that to benefit themselves in a sense of learning about what consumers are saying, learning from continuous consumer feedback, and using that somehow to their own. And I kind of built a project. I presented to our CEO at the time. And me and him and another person from the company, we were so passionate about that idea that we couldn't stop talking about it, discussing about it, and it ended up that the three of us decided to leave this previous company and start Birdie from scratch to focus on that opportunity.
Very cool. That's pretty interesting. I think being in the, I like to say it's the post-information age, right? Like we don't necessarily, the information age was having access to all this information, right? And that was super exciting when we first gained all those insights and that information. And then we got to the point, I feel, is kind of the post-information age, where it's how do we make sense of that information and how do we make it usable? So it sounds like you're addressing a really challenging problem that a lot of companies face.
Yeah, we like to say that there are two main things, two main pillars that make Birdie important and relevant. One of them is exactly what you said. We call it infobesity. So there's so much information of it, so much data available actually that most of executives, most of people struggle with really turning that data into something that's really actionable, into something that's really insightful. And the second we call the validation economy. And the validation economy is pretty much people today, they are not buying anything anymore based on what brands are saying. They are worried about other people's validation. So combining two things, like we need to get the validation from consumers and we need to try to make sense out of data. That was the perfect storm for us to start.
That's great.
That's great. So what did you talked a little bit about the origin story, but, how did the product come to life? Was it, bootstrapped? Did you have someone on the team that was technical? How did you actually take an idea to reality?
Cool. That's an interesting thing. So in our previous company, the one that I mentioned before, it's a bootstrap. So we always, and until today, It is still bootstrap. We never raised money. And when we started Birdie, one of the things that we said is that, okay, I want to have the experience of being VC backed. So we started bootstrap, but because we had a lot of relationship with some VCs and some investors, angel investors, we after less than 1 year, we already raised a seed round. And this helped us to grow the team. But before that, me, Alex, my co-founder, we are not technical. Rodrigo, who is our third co-founder, is technical, but he's not a data scientist guy. He's more product management, user interface. So he's more in that space in the front end part of things. And we needed someone that was really, really good with data science, with artificial intelligence. We stayed for probably 4 months talking to a lot of connections, trying to find someone that was not only technically good, but also had a very strong cultural fit with us, because you know that for you to have like a partner, someone that's going to be with you in our journey, is not only about the technical part, it's all about what you want to build, having the same dreams, the same views. And it took us a while. We spoke to a lot of people until we were connected to a guy named Everton. And as soon as we met him, like every question we asked him, the answers were like exactly the same, like things that we thought about, the same vision, the same dreams, the same wanting to build something that is really disruptive. And then we say, okay, we found the right guy. We know we got goosebumps when we were talking to him, and we say, okay, this is the guy. Then we managed to convince him to leave his previous company and join us. And that's when we started developing everything.
Wow. How did you develop that initial vision and make it something that you all agreed on? Did someone kind of write it out? Was it just sitting down and talking about it? You know, I'm always interested in how you kind of take things that are in your head, and there's probably so much, and pare it down to something that's like a plan.
We had two main moments in that. The first one was Everton and Rodrigo pretty much developing like the backbone of the concept. So they developed a few crawlers because we needed to capture the information. Then they built the AI models, the basic AI models, to process and structure that. And then just a basic dashboard so we could start showing those insights from the crawlers. And that was the first draft that we had. From there, we started presenting to a few companies, to a few people to get the perception. And in one of those presentations, we presented it to people inside Samsung. And they invited us to join an acceleration program that they had. And this was the second stage, because after we joined the acceleration program, we were able to get some money from them to improve the development of the product. And then we hired a few interns. So in the beginning, it was pretty much Everton and interns that were helping him with doing the crawlers and the machine learning model, until we really had something in place that we could start giving to the hands of the clients and say, start testing, start giving us feedback and tell us what you know. Building a product actually is an ongoing thing. You guys know that, like you're always improving, you're always learning, you're always getting feedback. So one thing that we did is that we started to use BI platforms just to build faster prototypes that we could give to the clients, get their feedback before we really developed the product. So we are iterating a lot with that, and that gives us more time and may give us the certainty that when we are putting it into the product, it's something that's really validated by the customers.
So I'd like to ask, I think there's a number of things that dive into there, but as far as that customer feedback and development of the product, right? It's an ongoing thing, and it's all so important to hear what your users are saying. What do you guys have in place to capture that information? And then how do you organize it, prioritize it, et cetera?
We have to improve a lot on that process. Today, we use our own platform. So our platform has a CMS in the back. Mm-hmm. So any feedback that the consumer gives related to data quality, quality of the sentiment, quality of the context of the insight, so if that makes sense or not. They give feedback in the platform, in our own platform, and that goes to our CMS, and that CMS feeds the model. So it's a constant process of improving the model. Like the artificial intelligence needs to be built from somewhere, and it's built, in our case, from the collective crowds, from the feedback of consumers. And that's for the data. For the features, so for product features for the front, we have weekly sessions with some of the clients, and they tell us what they're missing. When they tell us that, so that's not, we don't have an interface or something like Intercom, any place that they share. When they tell us that in the meetings, we use Notion to organize stuff, to prioritize, pretty much based on some criteria, how many clients are asking, how crucial that is for the client, how scalable that is for us as a feature that we can use for others. And we use that to define what we're going to start developing.
That's great.
I'm kind of curious, we usually talk about this towards the end, but vision of the company in the future, like where do you see things going, not only for, Birdie, but also the industry and the trends that are coming up?
For the industry, starting with the industry, we think we are in a very special moment because there is a lot of M&As happening, a lot of investment happening in this space of consumer insights and artificial intelligence, customer service. So there's a lot happening there. And I think that's a good moment exactly because of what I said in the beginning, right? More than ever, consumers are buying online. They're using other consumers' feedback to make their decisions, and that is generating a lot of uncertainty for brands. These brands need to, as fast as they can, get consumer feedback in a scalable way, learn from it, so they can finally improve their products, make changes to their service and anything like that. So that's a very special moment, and we're happy to be exactly working on that space in that moment in the right time. For us, what we have as a vision is that we started just capturing and processing user reviews, but we want to go much further than that. What we see ourselves becoming is a system of intelligence. And a system of intelligence is pretty much a layer that connects into systems of engagement, things like customer service platforms, social listening tools, any advertising platform. So anything that is in between the client and the brands where they are having conversations, survey tools, things like that, and systems of record like a CRM, ERP, any place that they are storing information. So the system of intelligence enters as the layer that's plugging into these two types of sources, that is plugging into the third-party sources too, and that's making sense of all this data. That's making sense of everything that's being said. And we see ourselves becoming the one place where a brand goes to learn about everything that their consumers are thinking, everything that their consumers are saying, everything they're expecting from the brand by connecting all these other sources.
I'm also would love to explore, because this is something that we're talking about with some other folks even right now, but how do you balance that vision with reality? And what I mean is, the speed of adoption in the industry, the, capability of customers to be able to integrate your speed at being able to acquire or build product. So how do you, I know as visionaries, we have this idea in our head and the future and what it could be and the potential. And then there's, all those challenges of reality. How do you balance that as a leader?
That's really hard. Sometimes you want to do something, but the market's not ready, or you need to have something before for that to make sense. I think in the beginning it's a little harder because before you get your first customers, it's a lot of guessing, right? It's a lot of what should I do next? Will this be the feature that will give me product market fit? Will this be the feature that will make my customers pay and stick with our product? And we made a lot of mistakes in the beginning. We wanted to do one thing because it was more cool, or because this was the platform of the moment, so there were, or even personal reasons. Oh, I love Reddit, so let's do Reddit first. So we made a lot of mistakes like that in the beginning. I think that once you start to getting the clients, you can use them a lot if you have a good relationship with them. And we are talking at Birdie as about an enterprise SaaS company, right? So we have a few enterprise clients that give us a lot of feedback that we have very close relationships with. They help us balance and understand what is more critical now. So we are constantly making changes in the roadmap, and sometimes bringing something that was planned to happen in the future to now based on what they need. So just to give you 2 examples that are happening right now, we were planning on adding new countries, new languages by the end of the year, but we had a client that requested for us to process Chinese. Actually had a few, but one of them was almost like a required feature. And because the Chinese market is growing a lot, the consumers in China are very different for them, so they really need to get this feedback. And we decided to bring that to Q1, exactly because this is something that I needed. So they help us to tune and bring things to either now or bring it to later based on what they are requesting. And the same thing happening with an integration with Medallia. Medallia is a survey platform that's very, very big. And we are integrating with them now because there was also a request from a few clients that use their solution.
I think, a lot of founders, before they get started and even early on, don't realize sometimes, so those requests that come in and you decide to put them up front means something else probably comes off the table, that you may have planned and thought for the future. And I see that all the time is you have to make these decisions that maybe something gets prioritized, but that means something else gets deprioritized. How do you balance that as part of your vision, of making sure you're prioritizing the right things, and especially when they're requests from clients versus also the long-term vision of the product?
Yeah, that's we need to have I think that's when the power of the team comes. We have a very diverse and complementary team. Some of us are more optimistic, so we always think that we can do things. Some of us are more conservative and really try to put things on paper and see if it's possible to fit to deliver 2 things at the same time and things like that. So I think normally when we get to these moments, or we have a request here, we have an idea there, we sit together, everybody, we try to balance all the opinions and see if we can really identify what is the one thing that needs to be prioritized. So you gave a perfect example. Like when we brought Chinese, we needed to postpone something, and then postponing something means needing to go to the clients and tell them that you're not going to deliver something that you promised to deliver before, means talking to your team who was focused on delivering that as an OKR and saying, no, that's not the focus anymore. So there's a lot of communication that needs to happen. But I think that as long as everybody in the team understands that, agrees that that's the best solution, and give the buy-in to that idea, it's easier. There are some times where we add a new thing to the roadmap and we don't postpone anything. So we say, no, we have to deliver those 2 things at the same time, and we try to explain that to the team, the reasons why. And normally this comes from the business side. Normally this comes from me, this comes from Alex, right. and the technical team. They need to say, okay, I understand. We need to do both. Let's find a way. So it's a lot of conversations, a lot of meetings, a lot of alignment between the team. But that's something that's really important. I think to make it easier, the CTO has to have an easy way to show to everyone else why he needs to replace something with something, why he can't do 2 things at the same time. Right. I think sometimes the problem that happens is because somebody can't communicate, can't explain why it's not possible to do the 2 things at the same time. if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think that's a challenge.
For sure. Yeah, I'd like to hear more about the dynamic amongst the team. So, first of all, how do you guys, what does the team look like right now? How many people and what different roles do you have on the team?
So I'll start with the leadership team. We have Alex, he's our CEO. I'm the CRO, so I'm more focused on bringing revenue and keeping the clients. Then we have Rodrigo, the CPO. He's the owner of the vision. He's the owner of the roadmap, and he's the owner of everything that we are prototyping and iterating with the clients. We have Everton, the CTO. He's the one that builds everything that we deliver. And we are the four founders. Then recently we brought 2 new executives to the team. One is Ted. He's our COO. And he's pretty much very close to the clients in the projects, doing part of customer success, making sure that the quality of the product is delivering what our clients request. And recently, Fernando, the CMO. I was, until a few months ago, responsible for both marketing and sales, and now I'm only with sales. He's more with marketing. Our team is probably 45 people now. We are growing a lot. We grew a lot I think until 3 or 4 months ago, we were with 30 people. Now we're almost with 50. Most of them are in the technical team. So we have 1 person in HR. We have 1 person helping with sales. We have 1 person in marketing. And then everybody else is in product, technology, or operations, making sure that we are delivering a good product.
How do you communicate that vision and the strategy and the decisions that, when there's a feature that you have to, table for a time being because there's another one that comes on that you guys got to focus on? How do you communicate that with the team? Like, do you guys do a lot of consistent communication amongst, leadership and then, share that with the team? What does that look like? Just curious. You mentioned, some real positives about the team and especially the fact that it's growing.
We are a remote team, and we were always remote. So before the pandemic, we were already remote. I'm in Florida, Alex is in California, Ted is in Dallas. So we're all over, not only the US, but most of the team is in Brazil. So the communication needs to be very good because we are not in the same room all the time, so we have different time zones. So it's not easy in that sense. So that's why we focus so much in communications. And what we do, first, every week we share a report with the team about the results. We use OKRs, so we have goals for the quarter, and every week we share how are we performing on each of the OKRs, so everybody can know how the other teams are going. Every month we have an all-hands meeting where the CEO, where Alex brings more information about our strategy, the decisions we made, how things are going. And we also have specific meetings between each teams every week. So these are the 3 main things that we do to communicate. When we decided this year, for instance, when we defined the company goals for the year and for the quarter, everybody got together to discuss, to see, and to validate those OKRs before we started focusing on them. So we always try to do something that's also very collaborative. We use Discord as our main communications tool. We used to use Slack. The technical team prefers Discord, so we moved to Discord. And we have a lot of voice channels there. We have a lot of different channels for people to enter and participate into a specific conversation. So it's a very open culture where we share a lot of what's happening.
Yeah, on the culture side of things, I'm imagining, with more people working remotely and virtual teams and all of that, I think that is more challenging in that case. Virtual people aren't in the same rooms. They're not seeing each other physically every day. So how do you emphasize culture and how do you build that and grow it?
For me, building and emphasizing culture is on every small act that you do. Like everything that you do every day is either reinforcing or going against our culture. So this is one thing that we are very concerned as founders. We have a few programs. So just to share a few of them. So we have a weekly meeting where one of the executives presents how their area works, how their area is going, so everybody can enter and participate and see. So to bring this open culture, everybody's calendars is open, so anybody from the company can enter and see what I'm doing, with who am I talking. They are allowed, if they want, they can pretty much jump in the meeting to participate and give their thoughts on that. So we try to promote that a lot. We also have a lot of integration activities. So every 15 days, we bring specific groups from the company together so they get to know each other better. We try to do like some games, some trivia, so they can have this not working moment, so they can really get to know each other, because we are very, we believe a lot that you need to know your colleagues well, so you can know how they work, we can know how they function, and we can build a real relationship with them that goes beyond pretty much working. So we try to do all the small things that are for the team to participate, but we also, as individuals, think of everything that we're doing and try to be very aligned to what we preach as a culture. So just to give you one example, we had a meeting last week where we were talking about the one-on-ones with the team. We have one-on-ones with every team member every 15 days to give them feedback about how they're going, ask about what they think about the company. And in this review that we did as leaders, as executives, one of us brought, like, guys, we have teammates that are complaining about how long it's taking for us to give feedback or to answer something when somebody from the team asks. And one of the things that we want to be is very responsive. So he brought this problem. Everybody in the same day started to be more responsive with the team, because we need to be the first ones to be responsive, so we can request that from our teammates.
Yeah, I always find culture interesting. For me, I've always believed that it's one of those things that the word means something different to everybody. It's like, a sandwich for one person is, full of meat. Another person might want this and what they have in their head. And it's, I'm kind of curious, what challenges you kind of got into a challenge with culture, but what other challenges have you faced from a cultural perspective, and how do you see that of, what other people think and feel culture is in an organization?
First thing that came to my mind when you were saying that was, we recently had a cultural challenge, I would say. Most of the team is Brazilian, and Ted was our first American in the team. And it in the beginning, it was hard for us. Like, Brazilians are all most of the times late. They're much more informal. They, they take a while to go to the point sometimes, like in a meeting, and Americans are a little more straightforward. You never see a 15 minutes meeting in Brazil. That's almost impossible, right? And here is very common. So I think in the beginning, we needed to learn how to work with the American culture. Just to bring an example, that's not like necessarily company culture, but it goes even beyond that.
Yeah.
And I think that a culture is also a live thing, right? Every time you bring a new team member, they are helping to shape that culture. And I think that happened to us. And even like you have different moments in the company. When we were in the beginning, we needed to be totally dynamic, totally responsive. The processes were not that important. Now that we're growing, like with almost 50 people, with more clients, we need to have a better process in place. So for us as a company, we always need to know how that will affect our culture, how will our culture affect that. So I think maybe one of the reasons why it's sometimes hard for people to have similar understandings of a culture is because a culture is live and it's changing all the time. So I think challenges will come, and the strongest is your culture. The stronger is your culture, the stronger it will become after a new challenge appears, because it will kind of shape the culture to become better based on what's happening at that moment.
Shifting gears a little bit, so you guys have raised money, correct?
Yes.
And then I also see you're co-founder of GV Angels, so an angel investment group. So obviously, I'm imagining you probably have some great insights into, how do you position yourself, to give yourself the best shot to really tell your story and, impress investors.
Yeah, it's interesting to be on both sides because I'm always learning. As an investor, I learn a lot how startups sell themselves, like what are the other startups are doing as best practice in different areas, since reporting or going through challenges. So I learn a lot with the startups that I invest on or the startups that I analyze. And as a founder, I am able to think and see how investors evaluate companies. So it for sure helped me a lot to improve our pitch, to improve what we're doing, and even become more tolerant as an investor with startups, as a startup with investors, because there's always like sometimes the startups judge investors, sometimes investors judge startups, and when you are in both sides, you understand the other part much better. Probably the best insight that I would give, the best advice that I would give to founders is you need to build a relationship. Investors are like any other relationship that we have, either with teammates or with clients. The worst thing that you can do is think about raising money only when you need the money. And then like just trying to sell your company to everybody else, like adding people on LinkedIn and sending your pitch and the cold call approach. You need to start building the relationships. You need to research about the VCs, see if they make sense, if their thesis aligns to your proposition as a company, because otherwise you will never, you will be evaluated like everyone else. And investors today, I probably receive, 10 requests every week from companies who want to present their startup to me. And that's because I'm not like actively investing. I'm just like part of this group. But I imagine other investors, how many startups that reach out to them. So if you don't have anything to stand out, if you don't have the relationship, if you don't have anything built with them, they probably will be much harder for you to get the money from anybody else.
Yeah. So of those that reach out to you, which are the ones that stand out? Kind of what are the approaches that really stand out from the others, that somehow differentiate themselves and say, wow, that sounds like I would like to talk to them?
I remember one startup I didn't invest. I actually never spoke to them, but they send me reports every month of how they are growing. So this shows they are organized. This shows that they control what they're doing. This shows that they have a process in place. This shows that they are concerned about keeping the relationship. And I like to follow. I open their updates all the time. I follow them. So even if they don't know, I'm getting closer to them because they have a very good way of presenting themselves to everybody else. And this is the one company that I always think about when I'm thinking about investing, when I'm thinking about fundraising, because they have this very mature process of communicating with investors. So I think it's more than the first impression. The first impression is good, but it's about the consistency, So they were able to not only reach out to me, but to keep sending me updates and say, hey, I'm doing better. Remember last month I told you that I was going to do this? I did. Here's what's happening. So I think this consistency and proving that you're working is something that stands out, because a lot of startups they say they're doing everything. They say they have everything, but they go away and they never tell you anything else because they probably didn't deliver it. So that's one thing that stands out for sure. And I think the other is being concise, like showing your value proposition very fast, very quickly, in a very easy to understand way. I don't like companies that try to approach not saying they are trying to pitch to you, oh, I like to have you in my network. Oh, let's talk about whatever. And after you start engaging with them, the first thing that they ask for is money. So I also like people who come to get advice. So start building the relationship too. I think that's important.
That's some really good insights.
How do you balance, as you're looking at folks, I think this topic's really interesting around investing and investors, but what about the tangibles versus the intangibles of folks? Like, obviously the tangible is what's the addressable market and what's your plan and all, how much existing funding and how many customers, but the intangibles of their kind of personality and their drive, their background, how do you balance that? And is there one stronger than the other?
I think the personal is most of the times more important, and that might be a lot of people might not agree with that, but especially in an early stage company, one thing about any company is that they are going to do a lot of things wrong, is that they are going to assume a lot of things that don't make sense, is that they're going to build a lot of things that are not what customers want, and they will need to pivot and change, and they will face a lot of challenges in their lives, in their past. And if the person who is leading that company is not resilient, if the person who is leading that company doesn't have a clear vision, if they are not coachable, so if they can hear feedback and improve really fast based on that, it doesn't matter how good is your idea, it doesn't matter how big is your market, you won't be able to get to where you need. So I think the founders are one very important piece of the startup, especially in the early stage ventures, because the earlier stage you are, the less you have to show, the less deliverables you have. So you need to believe in that person. You need to see if they will have the strength to get where they're saying they will get, if they will be able to go through this journey and not give up. So probably I would say that is 60 to 70%, because a good founder can have a very wrong idea, but if he's good, he will notice that fast and he will pivot the product and he will build something else and he will be successful in that. And then it's better to have a successful product in maybe a little smaller market than to be one in a huge market and keep with that idea. So that's my personal opinion. Of course, everything else is very important, and the later you get in this road, the more you need to prove that you are delivering. Otherwise, then you don't have the right product.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. What about deal breakers on both sides? For a founder looking at investors, are there any things that you think should be or they should consider as deal breakers? And then same thing the other way, an investor looking at a founder, something that's kind of like that don't want to touch this.
For me, the deal breakers are related to culture again. So similar to having a co-founder, you need to have somebody that has the same values as you have. They have the same goals as you have. Otherwise, you have problems. Every journey has a lot of problems. Either between co-founders and between a company and an investor, you have a lot of fights, you have a lot of disagreements. And if you don't have a glue, something that's stronger than any of those things, you will have problems in the future. So I think the one deal breaker, and that's why building the relationship is important. That's why getting to really know who you're dealing with is very important. For me, this is the one deal breaker for both sides. So if you don't feel comfortable with the investor or the founder, if you don't see yourself having a good relationship with them, if you don't see that the conversation is flowing, or if there's anything that doesn't match, probably that will become a problem in the future. And there's no money that will hide that. There's no money that will make that go away, in my perception. One deal breaker as an investor that I learned is, most of the times it's very hard for the single founder. We already had cases where you had one founder. This founder was the guy that did everything, and he wasn't able to really build a team. And normally, if that person is not able to build a team, they will get to the second step. But there's a point that if you don't know how to build a team, if you don't know how to hire people that are better than you, or at least as good as you won't be able to scale. You won't be able to reach to the next level. So, right. And we had cases, I had investments that I made that it was a single founder, and the guy at some point, he couldn't handle everything, and he threw the towel. He said, okay, I give up, I can do it. So it's not a deal breaker, but every time I look at a company and I see that guy is like it's him for everything, I get a little concerned. I prefer when there are more people like sharing the experience with them, because it's really hard to be a founder and only yourself all the time. Mm-hmm. And as a startup, we always look for investors that want to go beyond the money. We want the money, but we want to learn. So our current investor, one of the reasons why we chose them is because they are like references in building sales machines. They are references in building great products. So we have meetings with them all the time where they give us a lot of feedback. They teach us a lot, and having this exchanging this knowledge is worth much more than any money. So if you don't see that the VC has more to add to your company than money, probably that should be a deal breaker, because you can find money anywhere today.
I think it's a great point to reiterate, because it's something I've actually always given advice to founders that have come around is money is not the only thing. You want to find some other benefit to having an investor. Is can they bring you customers or some unique insight or something else? So I think that's a great point to kind of reiterate. It's awesome.
Just to talk a little bit about the co-founders, since there's 4 co-founders on your team, correct? So I'm curious as to what, as you mentioned, there's going to be fights. There's going to be, you guys are all going to be passionate about different aspects, and there's going to be some conflict in there from time to time. What does the dynamic look like between the 4 of you, and how do you guys grow the relationship and stay on the same page, and how do you approach that?
First thing is being really close. I think the first thing that we wanted to do, and for us it was a bit easier because 3 of us, we know each other for 15 years almost. So the company has 2 years, but our relationship is longer. We've been through a lot. But first thing is building this connection and trusting the other part, and knowing that anything they say, anything they do, anything they believe is not against you, is not for them, is for the company. So we have we everything we say, everything we do, we state that to each other. Like we don't need to think of ourselves, we need to think about the company. And if we all say and try to focus on what's best for the company, we should never have a fight that is critical, because we know that we're fighting for the same goal. We're fighting for the same thing. We just believe in different ways of getting there. And it's great that we have different point of views, because when we show these different point of views, we always find something that's better. So I think the first thing is trusting. And the second thing is knowing that what everybody's doing is for the best of the team. That makes it much easier. That removes the personal, feeling that they are saying something to you or about you is not. And the other thing is knowing yourself a lot. I think I'm learning about myself a lot. I'm learning what are my weaknesses, where are the places where I need to step out and say, okay, I have no idea. I think that's the best thing, but Rodrigo knows that better than me because he knows about product. I don't know. I'll give him my opinion, but I'll trust that he will make the best decision. So the more you know yourself, the more confident you feel about yourself at the same time, because you know that, okay, this is not for me, this is for me, and you don't feel like personally attached to anything, and you know when's the time to step out and let the other make the decision.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I've had varying opinions of, co-founders and partners over the years. I've had my business for 20 years and I've met a lot and I've seen some really horrible situations. So I'd always had mixed feelings. But I think what I've learned over the years is, and I'm curious in your insight to it, is when there's co-founders that seem to have different and complementary skills, it's very helpful. But when there's overlap, it seems to really break apart and fall apart, that I've found. So do you see that with your co-founders? And generally, do you think that is important, is that there's, that people have their focus, kind of their lanes that they're in and their expertise, and that works well together, versus having folks that may have similar, capabilities and background and knowledge?
I never thought about that. Now that you said it, makes a lot of sense. I agree with you. I think maybe one of the reasons why we get along so well is that we are very different. So we all have our field of expertise. We all have common experiences, a few things, but I'm better with one thing, Alex with another, Rodrigo with another, and Everton with another. I think that at some times, like depending on the overlap, I'm thinking now we do have some overlap. So let's say me and Fernando, I used to lead marketing, and we brought Fernando to lead the marketing team. And one of the reasons why we brought him is because he knows more about marketing than me, right? Because he's been working with that for years, and I'm not an expert in marketing. He is. And in the beginning, me and him, he came from the industry. He came from traditional companies, so he has a much more structured and planned way of thinking, while I was a doer. Like, let's do it, let's make mistakes, and then we do it again. There's no problem. So for me in the beginning, the problem was not having this overlap. The problem was more that my way of doing was very different from his. Right. I remember our first week was like, no, we should do this way, we should do it that way. And then at some point we sat together and we said, okay, we brought you. I told him that we brought you because we wanted to do things differently. So if we don't let you do, there's no point in bringing you at all. So I think sometimes the overlap is not as much of a problem as trying to keep things the way they were when you were leading that, or when you were responsible for that. Sometimes it's hard for you to detach. So for me, that was an experience that when I said, okay, no, you're right, let's do things your way, it was much easier. And then he could also grow and occupy his space. And now the relationship between everyone is much better.
Yeah, if you're going to bring on smart people and not let them run, what's the point of bringing those smart people?
Exactly.
So I'd be curious, Pat, what does the rest of the year look like for Birdie? What is the game plan? What are some of the goals, things you guys are hoping to accomplish this year?
It's going to be a busy year. We have an aggressive growth plan. We plan to raise a Series A round right in the beginning of next year. And as I told a few times here, as we want to raise next year, we are starting to talk to VCs right now. So besides everything that we're doing to sell, everything that we're doing to develop the product, to accelerate, because our clients want to go global and we're still only local to the US. So there's a lot of things, like there's growing in several directions. We are also starting to invest some time in fundraising because we want to start relationships with companies, with VCs now. For when we're ready, we know them already. They know us. They saw our growth, and they were with us in this journey. So it's going to be very busy. We expect by the end of the year to have grown more than 3 times. We expect to be with clients that are global. We already have clients that are not in the US, but we're still serving them in the US market. And soon it will be global. And we are also growing the team a lot. So we're now with almost 50 people. Probably we'll have 70, 80 by the end of the year. So there's different efforts happening everywhere in the company, which is good, which is exciting. This is what we signed up for when it started. So we are really excited for what's about to come.
Very exciting.
Really cool. What do you see as some of your biggest challenges that you face coming up? Like, those are the plans, but what are the challenges to growth and to achieving the goals that you have?
The main challenges are still related to being a young company, which means we don't have a strong brand, and we sell to enterprise companies. So lots of these companies are still a little more conservative when it comes to selecting vendors. Like they prefer to hire a company, I don't know, an SAP, than a small company that maybe delivers the same thing, but they don't know, because a lot of people in these companies are conservative and they don't want to risk their jobs, so they go with the safer option. And that's one of the challenges that we still face. We already had in the past a lot of companies that say, that's great, but we already have a tool here that does something that's not quite what you do, but I don't know if I'm able to prove, so we need to break this barrier. I think that we're about to break it because we got our first enterprise clients. We're building great use cases with them. So once we're able to show that, I think it will be much easier, but that's the barrier that's going to hold us off for a while. And the second is the long sales cycle that all enterprise products have. So we have companies that we've been talking for 3-4 months, and then suddenly the guy that we're talking to, he leaves, or they have any changes inside the company, and then the cycle extends for more 3, 4, 6 months. So that's another thing that we are always fighting against the clock. How can we make our sales cycle shorter?
Yeah, it's so important. So I've been asking the same question to everybody towards the end of these shows. And what I'm curious about is if you were able to go into the past, right before you started the business, and sit down with yourself and have some coffee, what advice would you give yourself about the future and what you're about to embark on?
Probably would be not to be so anxious and about everything and enjoy things more. We sometimes put a lot of pressure over ourselves because we want to deliver something that it didn't happen. We want to grow faster. And sometimes we forget about enjoying everything that's happening in this journey. So I learned so much. I grew so much. But I remember a lot of moments where I was really stressed or concerned or thinking that I don't know if we're going to make it, and I feel that some of these moments I could have enjoyed more, like remembering we have some photos of the first office that we rented, and it was just the 4 of us, so like these small things, the first person that we hired, and I would like to have enjoyed that a little bit more.
Yeah, that's great. And I think we've had that conversation with a couple of folks throughout this, is the whole journey versus the destination. And, I've got a lot of entrepreneur friends, and it's a common topic is sometimes you're so focused on the destination and hitting something and, reaching a certain level or achieving a certain goal that you forget about the journey, and you're not really living in the moment. So I think that's such a, great insight to be able to give to yourself earlier on.
Yeah. So Pat, where can our visitors go to learn more about you and Birdie and pay attention to what you guys are up to?
Perfect. They can visit birdie.ai, very simple, or our website, and they can probably message me on LinkedIn. It's LinkedIn/in/Patricia OMG, like oh my god. That's my last name, and they can send messages. They can ask for information. Anything that I can help with, it will be a pleasure.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This has been great. We really appreciate you spending the time here with us, and I know our visitors certainly do as well. So thank you, Pat.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure being with you.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Well, have a good one, and everyone take care, and we will see you next time.